A cashless society may sound like something from a science fiction movie to you. However, most governments and financial institutions want and are working toward it with your money and tax dollars. Will we see a cashless society? Will BRICS replace the dollar? Could the devaluing of the dollar catapult us into World War III? Let's talk about it. Welcome to the Endtime Show. Vince Stegall here with Doug Norvell. Thank you for joining us. Don't forget to give us the heart, share, and comment as you engage throughout the show. We'll do our best to incorporate your question and comments as much as we can. So do that to help us break through the algorithms to get to your friends and family. Today we're excited to be talking about a subject that really hits home with all of us. Before we get into that with Dr. Bob Costa, did you know that there's nearly $1 trillion of infrastructure and pandemic funds that yet to be spent? That's right. There's a massive amount of money that the Biden administration is pushing hard to spend in their last few months. If the president is able to push these funds out, we could see another prolonged inflation surge just like during COVID. And I'm sure you remember how those affects the high prices and what happened to most Americans. There is hope, though. There's a surge in prices that they can be beaten. And one option to consider is a gold IRA from Birch Gold Group. It's the ultimate inflation hedge for your savings in uncertain times. To see how to protect your IRA or 401k, get your free info kit on gold by visiting birchgold.com/endtime. You'll be able to pray, ask the Lord what you should do. Birch Gold makes it seamless to roll over your retirement account while preserving your tax advantage status. So don't wait for the president's spending spree. Protect your financial future now. Visit birchgold.com/endtime and get your free info kit from Birch Gold. All right, Doug. Bob Costa's becoming, well, he's always been a brother to us.
Yeah.
I've known him for a very long time, at least known of him for a very long time. Mm-hmm. And in 2016, he and I got to work more closely together, and we have done that. Since 2016, when Irvin Baxter passed away, he has been a trusted advisor in my life. He's been a trusted advisor in the organization of Endtime, and he has been a tremendous blessing that, we couldn't say how much value he has brought to our lives on a personal level, right, and on an organizational level. And so it is always great to have Dr. Costa here with us. Brother Costa. Bob Costa, Robert Costa. What are we calling you today?
You can call me Bob. That's fine.
All right. Well,
we're amongst friends, just
yes,
the three of us.
Absolutely. Nobody's listening at all.
That's right.
Thank you so much for joining us once again. We always love having you here.
Oh, it's my privilege. You mentioned that you and I have been working since 2016. And that is just shocking to me. I can't believe that Reverend Baxter has been gone that long. But
well, he passed in 2020, but if you recall, 2016 is when you and I started working closly.
Okay.
And I think.
Oh yes.
I think
that's right. The accounting.
I think that that I wasn't on your recommended list.
Oh, I wouldn't say that. I was just concerned about, well, we don't need to get into all that.
Hey, no, I was on my concern list too.
You take an organization the size of Endtime, and I was just saying to, I keep wanting to say Brother Baxter, old habits die hard. Forgive me for any listening audience that's not familiar with that terminology, but God being our Father, that makes us all brothers and sisters. So,
there you go.
Organizationally, I was just wondering how that was going to work with, the finances. And so I had a little bit of trepidation, but
you should have.
You were beyond amazing and worked out far better than I think anyone could have dreamed, except maybe your grandfather, who was always in your corner. So
Well, you're very kind, and it's been great getting to know you and working closely with you. And of course, you are very much an expert and bring so much insight, and our audience loves you being on the End Time show. And as we started talking about one source, we said, man, we need to see if we can just take any more of Dr. Costa's time, and maybe there's something there for one source. So there might be something brewing. I don't know if we're ready to announce anything officially, but if you would love to see something like that on one source, let us know. That'll help us in the decision-making process, Doug, as if decisions can't already be made. So BRICS is happening right now, Dr. Costa, and well, there's so much going on with BRICS. Of course, there was a story that came out recently about 47 countries ready to join, and I know there's so much development around BRICS. We've talked about it with you less than a year ago now. What do we need? I guess we'll need help reminding folks what BRICS is, and even what has happened just recently as it develops and continues to expand.
Sure. BRICS was originally formed in 2009 as a intergovernmental organization in response to the G7 nations. And BRICS is an acronym for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Then on January 1st of this year, Iran, Egypt, Ethiopia, and the UAE were admitted to BRICS. Saudi Arabia and Argentina were invited. Argentina had a change in political landscape and did not join. Saudi Arabia is still assessing, but they are very pro-BRICS in the sense of trade, and they are participating fully in their annual summits. In 2014, BRICS created a new development bank with $100 billion in capitalization. They also created a currency pool worth another $100 billion. Most recently, and let me see if I can do this. This is new technology, so bear with me. But most recently, Turkey joined BRICS, which was a very big deal. And as you mentioned, there have been a number of countries that have been invited. I can't get rid of the ads for whatever reason, so forgive me. But 20 additional countries have been invited to join this year, according to MSN, and we'll get rid of their ads. 46 nations have expressed interest in joining BRICS this year. 20 have actually filed applications. Nations are clamoring to join BRICS, which the reason that is significant is, BRICS already makes up so much of the world's population and the world's GDP. The 45% of the world's population right now is part of BRICS membership. As far as economies, 57 trillion is represented by BRICS right now, which is 37% of the global GDP. And you compare that to the G7 nations, of which we're a part, at 30% global GDP. And you can see that BRICS has already eclipsed us and the G7 economically. In 2022, before the UAE joined and before Saudi Arabia started participating, in 2022, BRICS represented 41% of the world's oil production, and BRICS is specifically designed to devalue the US dollar by getting the world off the US dollar standard and the petrodollar and they are also designed to avoid sanctions imposed by the US and Europe. So, for instance, when Russia invaded, and what this speaks to is why BRICS is of interest to us in the US. So, when Russia invaded Ukraine, the US and the G7 nations imposed what they thought would be crippling sanctions on Russia. Some of those sanctions included seizing Russian assets, bank assets, and then they imposed the sanction which prevented Russia from being able to use the SWIFT banking system, which is how clear inter-nation transactions, specifically as it relates to oil. Well, BRICS has developed a bank in 2014 called the New Development Bank. They've got a currency pool. They're working on a BRICS currency that they're hoping to make further announcements in next month's summit in Russia. And basically what they're doing is they're countering the influence of the West worldwide. They are doing things that could dramatically devalue our dollar and arguably already have. And that's why BRICS is of interest to us. That's why they're such a threat to our national economy and the value of the US dollar.
Doug, I've got a question, but I don't want to take us off BRICS if you're not ready to get off BRICS. So,
well,
go ahead if you don't want to get off BRICS.
Well, for one question I have is, we know that they're coming up in October. They're going to have this meeting.
Right.
All the BRICS community comes together and they have this big meeting. What is this like comparable to? What is this comparative to? Is it like the G20 summit, or what are they doing?
Well, they're coming together as, nation states and in a coalition. And to really understand what they're doing, you need to understand that 88% of global trade is funded in US dollars. And over 50% of Forex reserves, foreign currency reserves, are stored in US dollars. Up until recently, we had agreements with OPEC and with Saudi Arabia that forced other nations to trade oil in US dollar denominations. That has since gone by the wayside. As a matter of fact, Russia and China are right now doing their oil trading in their native currency. And with all these nations joining and BRICS having an alternative banking system, the concern is that a lot of what has propped up our dollar value, that being specifically that the US dollar is the world's currency, the world's reserve currency, and also that oil trading historically has been done on the US dollar, what is referred to as the petrodollar. Once that goes away, then the US dollar has a hard time maintaining its value. And then you add to that inflation and lots of other factors, and it kind of creates this perfect storm. So the reason that this upcoming meeting is so disconcerting is, number one, how many nations and what percentage of the world GDP those nations represent, coming together and specifically designing a World Bank, which is a BRICS bank, not the IMF or the World Bank, They're designing an entire financial system that takes, world trade away from the US dollar, and it creates a banking system that does not use the US dollar. And they're creating this alternative global financial system, and they were supposed to announce the rollout of a BRICS currency in this upcoming meeting. There's some speculation as to whether or not they're quite ready to do that, but they're already trading in their native currencies, and so we know that a BRICS currency is imminent. And what's really concerning about that is they are backing it in gold.
Okay.
So the US has moved away from a currency that is backed by gold, and China is pushing a BRICS currency that is going to be backed by gold and oil, basically commodities. So that is actually going to hurt the US dollar even more, because we got away from the gold standard years ago. And now the BRICS currency is going to be backed by gold or oil, basically a commodity backed currency, whereas the US dollar is backed by the full faith and credit of the United States Treasury.
As you've been talking, it makes me think about big banks like Chase and Bank of America and all those big banks like that are in the dollar. And so I wonder about, on a global scale, if BRICS becomes the primary currency, does that mean, say, the local Chase, or local, whatever that means for Chase, but the Chase down the road, does that mean BRICS is a currency that will eventually be available at those banks? Will we log into our bank accounts one day and see BRICS currency, or would new banks get built and there would be like competitive banks? Is that how it'll work?
Once upon a time, I would have said absolutely not, but the older I get and the more things change and the more rapidly they change, I don't think we can safely say that anything is out of the question.
Sure.
I suspect before you start seeing U.S. banks denominating U.S. accounts in BRICS currency, I don't find that likely in the short term, but you'll see Forex exchange places offering a BRICS currency. And here's an interesting thought. There are Forex traders use three primary currencies and their interrelation to do Forex trading. Right now, the US dollar is the primary of those three currencies. Imagine a world where even Forex trading replaces a BRICS currency with the US dollar. So think about this for a minute. World trade is conducted not in US dollars, but in BRICS dollars, whatever they're ultimately called. Oil trading is done in BRICS dollars. Forex trading is done in BRICS dollars. You can see that actually BRICS is trying to intentionally isolate the United States, which is what they believe we have done to them and their member nations. So this is retribution using the global finances, financial markets as a weapon.
You talk about these banks, and it makes me think about everything that they stand for, or what it seems like they stand for, and it reminds me of our friends at ACCU. These banks today, there was a time when those banks would uphold our values, but today they oppose what we stand for in a lot of cases, and I'm thankful that there's another option. For over 65 years, America's Christian Credit Union has been serving God-fearing Americans with integrity and faith, and they were founded by pastors for the benefit of their members, and for a limited time, our listeners, the Endtimers out there, they can earn $400 when they open one of those new checking accounts with qualifying activities, and Endtimers get an additional $100 bonus, so $500 for that when you use promo code Endtime. So don't stay with the banks that oppose your worldviews and may make BRICS available very soon. Faith-aligned banking is within reach. So folks out there can go to endtime.com/ACCU for program details, and you can get started today. Dr. Costa, when we start talking about the dollar and the devaluing of the dollar and BRICS as an uprising, I think about the dollar continuing to devalue, and then I wonder what happens to our savings, what happens to properties that are valued in the dollar, what happens to our jobs that pay with the dollar. How do we handle information like that?
Well, as you can see from the articles that I am sort of posting here, so that your listeners can see that this is not me making it up, but there are many financial publications and financial experts that are expressing grave concern over the BRICS currency, and it's likely to be a digital dollar, which is a whole nother conversation. But as you can see in this article here in Investing News, they are strengthening economic integration within BRICS countries that currently do business on the US dollar, at least on a global scale. It's trying to reduce the influence of the US dollar on the global stage. It weakens the standing of the US dollar as a global reserve currency. It encourages other countries to form alliances and develop regional currencies. I'm not sure how much of a risk that is directly to the dollar, but because nations have always formed alliances and possibly had alternative currencies, but never, specifically targeting the influence of the US dollar. But they are really trying to decouple the US dollar from the world economy. And what's really interesting to me about this is that they don't like the fact that, for instance, when we think about this for a minute, we experience inflation in the United States, and the last couple years have been a particularly good example. And we're saying in one of the strongest, presumably strongest economies in the world, that inflation is crippling our citizenry because people are not able to afford the increased cost of living. Now put global trade on a US dollar that is experiencing inflation, and what these countries are saying is, by being on the US dollar, we are becoming victims to the inflation that the United States government is creating through its spending policies, through its fiscal policies. We're becoming a victim to the rising interest rates that we have no control of, that the US economy is experiencing as a result of US government policy, and we want to be independent of that. And to a certain degree, I can understand their position. The problem is them creating this alternative economy, and the number of nations that are participating. It's going to have a devastating effect And it already is having a devastating effect, but it's going to grow much, much worse. Not only on the US dollar, but even potentially on the US banking system. And there are other things happening in the US banking system that make this potentially a perfect storm. So not only do we have a dollar that is devaluating, but we've got a potential looming banking crisis for this reason and several others.
Well, what do we do with that, Doug?
Well, I mean, one of my questions about that is, what should we do as a result of this as far as, the average middle class person like myself, what do I do to protect my savings, or even like IRAs and things like that, if our economy crashes over here because of what is happening there with BRICS? Where does that leave somebody like me?
It's an outstanding question, and I am reluctant to offer specific investment advice, so I will talk generically. And the only reason I'm reluctant to offer specific investment advice is everybody's circumstance is different. And one of the worst things that you can do is offer a strategy that might be a brilliant strategy for one person or one family or even a group of families, and then people apply that strategy and it doesn't work for them for a variety of reasons that we can't foresee, based on a 1-minute phone call or even an hour-long show. But one of the things that I think that you can do, you guys were advertising gold a little bit earlier, and I am not encouraging people to take their entire life savings and put it in gold. And I hear the music, so I think we're going to have a break in just a minute. So You tell me when to shut up.
All right. You will have to get the rest of that answer on the other side of the break. We'll be right back.
A voice spoke to me and said, "I've got something I want to show you." I was so sure God had talked to me, and I was stunned by what I saw.
A direct fulfillment of this over 2,500-year-old prophecy. The United States will stand with Israel.
Why haven't I ever seen this before?
1/3 of humanity will die. What do these beasts symbolize?
The lion, the bear, the leopard.
The combined beast from Revelation 13 represents the end-time government of the Antichrist. Understanding the end time.
Now streaming on Endtime Plus and available to order at endtime.com/UET. Go to endtime.com/UET or call 800-ENDTIME.
What if you could understand Bible prophecy? Dave Robbins, the host of the End Time Show's TV and radio programs, is holding a free prophecy conference near you. Gain peace and understanding about what the Bible says concerning end time prophecy. Call 1-800-ENDTIME or go to endtime.com/events to see when Dave will be in a location near you.
Welcome back to the End Time Show. Vince Stegall here with Doug Norvell and Dr. Bob Costa. Pleasure to have him on the show talking about all things money. Will cash be obsolete? Finances in the end time. We're covering it all today, and who knows what else we might get to. I do want to remind everyone out there that Dave, Doug, and I will be in Blue Eye, Missouri next week. You've been asking for the End Time Show to be 2 hours long, and this next week, I guess we're going to try it out a little bit, Doug. We're doing 3 hours of recording with the folks at Jim Bakker. Starts at 10 a.m. It originally started at 11. We had to adjust the schedule. So if you're planning to join us, you'll have to adjust your plans a bit to be there for the start. You can come late. Again, it's 3 different shows, 3 hours of content. So if you can be there from anywhere from, I guess, 10 to about 2, I think there's a lunch break and some breaks in between the sessions. That would be great. We would love to spend some time with you in Blue Eye, Missouri. Go to endtime.com/events to learn more about that. I'll actually be sticking around and preaching in Springfield, Missouri on Sunday. And then the following Wednesday after that, I'm preaching here in the Dallas area. All those details are available at endtime.com/events, plus the remainder of our conference schedule. And we've been telling you that big things are coming with Endtime Plus as it shifts to one source network. As you all know, we are live on television in Houston, Texas, Nashville, Tennessee, and now Louisville, Kentucky. We're celebrating with what the Lord is doing with One Source Network on television, 24/7 content that we're providing on those channels. But in addition to that, Endtime Plus, the streaming side of things, all of our apps, is rebranding to One Source. And that started to hit today. So we're excited about that. The apps will be updating soon, but you can now go to watch.osn.tv and you will see what used to be Endtime Plus is now One Source. Be patient with us. There's some growing pains. There's some hiccups that we're working through, but watch.osn.tv is now live, and very, very soon you will see additional content in it. Not just Endtime content, so the other shows that will be part of One Source will be populating there very soon. So we have some partners that are really excited about what's happening in One Source. They've teamed together to donate. Actually, they're matching everything up to $100,000 for the launch of One Source. You can give right now at endtime.com/one. Your $500 will turn into $1,000. Your $50,000 will turn into $100,000. Everything is being doubled up to $100,000. So go to endtime.com/one to be a founding contributor of One Source Network. And who knows, Doug, maybe Porch Prophecy or some other show. Maybe you'll launch another show, Doug.
Who knows?
You have so much knowledge. You're the guru. And so you've got so much to share, and I'm excited about what's happening with One Source. And Dr. Costa, it's always great to have you on the Endtime Show, and I can't wait to see how that develops in relationship with you and One Source as well.
Right.
Well, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to be here amongst friends. And I wanted to mention to your viewers that if it looks like I went 15 rounds with the heavyweight champion of the world, it's only because we were up till 3 in the morning setting up some new equipment, which we still haven't worked the bugs out yet. So I promise I'll try to take care of the bags under my eyes a little bit for next time. But
well, you look great. You sound great. You're a whole lot smarter than I am, so it's not showing.
I don't know about that.
It's not showing. The break came and it cut you off in the middle of a point. You were talking about Doug's question, which is what does the average American do if the dollar collapses? How do we protect whatever finances we have right now? How do we handle that? You were in the middle of answering that, and that dreadful music came on, and it always
That's okay.
always interrupts us. So sorry about that.
That's no problem.
Help us wrap that thought up if you don't mind.
You know, I suspect that to a certain degree we're going to be adjusting as situations develop, because nobody can forecast with accuracy what we see financial rough waters ahead, but nobody can forecast exactly what that means. We see the weakening of the dollar. We see a potential looming banking crisis. We see, inflation as a ongoing potential problem due to a number of factors. We see problems in the housing market. We see lots of problems in the commercial real estate market. So we don't know exactly what is going to develop. And to a certain degree, your strategy needs to be flexible. The first thing I would recommend to everybody is get out of debt. That is the first thing that, anybody can do. So, we used to talk about 18% credit cards. I'm seeing credit cards now that, when you look at the late fees of $40 or $50 plus 23, 24% interest, depending on what your balance is, you could be paying 30% or more in late fees and credit card interest. We see a rising rate environment in the mortgage market for anybody who's got a loan that is going to reprice at a higher rate. And I hope we'll be able to talk about that a little bit more either today or in the future as it relates to the commercial real estate market, because that's going to be a big problem for the banks. But, as we look to repricing loans and repricing debt, I think the very first place that people need to look is getting rid of debt. So let's say you have a 23% credit card. If you pay down that credit card, you are going to guaranteed save 23%. What guaranteed investment do you have right now that yields 23%?
Yeah.
So debt is a great place to start. After you get rid of debt, you should build a cash reserve of 3 to 6 months living expenses, because we don't know what's going to happen in the job market. Possibly someone, God forbid, would be laid off. It would, even though cash is being devalued at a rapid pace, you really need to have a cash reserve, an emergency fund, if you will. And with interest rates going up, maybe you can tie some of that up in short-term CDs or money markets. Go to our friends at ACCU or an institution that you have confidence in, and maybe get some of those rising rates on slightly longer term money, but you want to keep fairly liquid just in case of an emergency. Then, we talk about commodities and precious metals. I don't recommend that you put your entire net worth in precious metals, although if you look at the rise in gold prices, I probably wish I had a lot more in gold right now when I was able to buy it for $1,100, $1,200 an ounce, and now it's $2,500 and possibly looking to go higher. Gold is probably not realistic for most people, so maybe unless you invest in it as a share type of account, physical gold may not be a possibility. But I think silver is a good opportunity. So the country of China, for instance, is the most significant reserve nation in the world as far as its gold investments, but they are saying to their citizens that they ought to invest in silver. Well, anytime there are large purchases of a particular commodity, what happens to the price? It tends to go up. Yeah. So I'm not forecasting, I'm not guaranteeing that it's going to go up, but I think that in all likelihood, I think it will go up. Wall Street has shown some signs of weakness lately, but if you're worried about the US dollar, maybe you can invest in blue chip US companies that do international business and international trade, and maybe capture some of the non-US market in the process. So I think there's a lot of opportunities. I love real estate. I think real estate is very expensive right now, But I think that there are select opportunities in real estate as well for those of your listeners that maybe have a little bit more disposable funds or investment funds. I think real estate presents a world of opportunities. But the bottom line is, pay down debt, get a cash reserve, and then look towards hard assets that you can touch. That would be as short as I can make it, Doug. And I'm not known for being short, but as short as I can make it, that would be sort of a strategy that I would look towards, for most people.
All right, very good.
Well, I think about Warren Buffett having all this cash on hand, knowing that he's engaged with a global system. That could make someone feel warm and fuzzy on the inside, that someone that knows what he knows and of his caliber, he's got a whole lot of cash on hand right now. So if you were worried about cash going obsolete, I would imagine that he wouldn't have so much cash. And then I hear about Kamala's financial policies, and I'm going, man, what if Kamala wins? What's that do to the average Joe? The average Doug, if you will.
There you go.
What does that do? I'm sure you've seen some of Kamala's policies, and we've got another break coming in less than 2 minutes, so I will warn you of that. But what if Kamala wins? What's that look like for Americans?
Well, let's go to Warren Buffett very quickly first. Warren Buffett, as I think you were making reference to, has been dumping massive amounts of stock, which could lead one to reasonably conclude that either A, he sees some very turbulent waters for the stock market, which I think is a distinct possibility, or B, he is getting ready to do a large acquisition and is, consolidating his cash for a purchase, which, might be a possibility. But either of those is going to have an impact on Wall Street, even if he's not forecasting weaknesses in Wall Street, which I think he may well be. Even if he's getting ready for a purchase, anytime someone dumps a lot of stock, you notice the market reacted negatively right away. So that was not helpful as far as the U.S. Stock markets. We'll talk about a President Kamala after the break.
All right, you won't want to go anywhere for that, because that is a real possibility, so you need to know what might happen if Kamala wins. We'll address that on the other side. We'll be right back.
They that understand what is taking place will instruct many.
Except a man is born again, he can enter or see the kingdom of God.
I don't care what label you've been given or what label you've given yourself. You are essential. You still matter.
This is a journey, and when we get to the other side of that, that's where our prize is. That's where our reward is.
Endtime is not going anywhere.
Welcome back to the Endtime Show. Vince Stegall here with Doug Norvell and Dr. Bob Costa. We have much to cover in just a few short minutes, so we'll get right to it. What if Kamala wins? What does that mean for the typical American?
Well, I'm not necessarily making a political statement for those of your listeners who, for whatever reason, may support one ticket versus another. But I think economically, I think that there are some pretty serious issues with a Kamala Harris presidency. I think the first issue is taxes. I think it is unarguable that taxes will go up. And being a tax professional of many years, I'm deeply concerned about some of the tax policies that she has basically supported in the past. We don't really know, unfortunately. She hasn't done a major national interview since becoming the Democratic nominee. But we can look to past statements and some past comments. And one of the things that we know she supports, or at least has said that she supported in the past, was tax on unrealized gains.
I was hoping you'd bring this up because I don't know that the average person even realizes what that means. Unrealized gains, I think that's foreign language for a lot of Americans, and they think, oh, that doesn't impact me at all. But I'm hoping you can, I know you're going to highlight that and help us realize how it does impact the typical American.
Well, we're not exactly sure how it would work yet. But what we have heard is really disconcerting. So for instance, say someone was fortunate enough to buy Microsoft back when it was $10 a share. It has split or Apple, or I'm not endorsing Microsoft or Apple or anybody else. Let's say that you bought Amazon at $10 a share. And now it's trading at roughly $170 a share. And all of these stocks have split multiple times. So you do not actually, so if you look at your account balance, that account balance reflects the market value of those shares. Unfortunately, you don't have that cash. You don't have that cash until you sell those shares, and that triggers capital gains. In other words, the value of the share sold versus the cost of buying those shares, that is a capital gain. But you don't actually have that money until such time as you sell those shares. And historically, you've not been taxed on that money until you sell those shares. What is being proposed is that at least annually, they will take the value of the unrealized capital gains and they will assess an income tax against those gains. Here's the problem. Let's say you're sitting on a 401k that is worth $1 million on paper. And let's say that you put $100,000 into that 401k, particularly because you got a tax deduction when you put that $100,000 in. You could say, well, there's gains of 900,000, but there might even be gains of $1 million, depending on what the final legislation says, because all of that is going to be taxable when you take it out. But regardless whether it's 900,000 or $1 million, however the legislation works, if you had to pay capital gains tax on $900,000, let's just say let's just say that was $200,000 in tax at your effective tax rate. Where do you get $200,000 on a capital gain that you haven't realized yet? So what do you have to do? You have to sell the stock to pay the taxes. And if it's in a retirement account, then you trigger additional taxes if you're under 59 and a half, which makes the problem worse. And if everybody has to sell stock to pay taxes on unrealized gains, you might be selling at an inopportune moment, or as we saw with Warren Buffett the other day, anytime someone sells a massive amount of stock, it tends to make the stock price go down. So now you're chasing, all of a sudden people are selling stock to pay taxes on money that they don't really have in their hands yet. And we are lowering the stock market because we're selling stock. We're not buying stock, we're selling stock. And it's just a cascading problem. It would have a disastrous consequence potentially on Wall Street. It could have a disastrous consequence. What if you inherited a family farm? And what if that acreage is now worth, let's say, $15 million? But you don't have $3, $4, $5 million in tax to pay on the unrealized capital gains. So now you have, what do? Do you sell farmland? Well, that's that much more farmland that you can't farm and produce crops, which is going to reduce your future income. So, you know, this whole tax the rich and everybody pay their fair share may sound good on paper, but it's got disastrous real world consequences. Let's just take one other policy, if we may. So the other day she announced, okay, if you're a first-time home buyer, I'm going to give you 25, well, first of all, she can't, nor can any government entity give us anything. If they give us a break or a handout or whatever it may be, they're taking it elsewhere because government has no money except what it takes in taxes. So she said, I'm going to give first-time home buyers $25,000. And I said, that's a horrible idea. Because right now, the reason that housing is so expensive is because there's more demand than there is supply. So let's say that 9 people are looking at the same house, and you give all of them $25,000. You haven't helped them at all. All you've done is given the seller of that house at least $25,000 more than they already had in a hot real estate market. So you haven't helped the buyer at all. All you've done is raise the price of single family housing by at least $25,000 and maybe more. These are the unintended consequences of uninformed financial policies. And these are things that people need to seriously consider, you know, when they're assessing, you know, all these giveaways that these politicians promise. I almost wish they wouldn't do anything. If they did nothing, it would be better financially than meddling in these markets endlessly and tweaking a tax system endlessly. You know, doing nothing would actually be preferable.
Well, you said they were unintended, and I'm not sure that they are. Now, you didn't say that. That was me. I'm not sure that they're unintended. I think about...
You may have a point.
One of our callers called him Klausy Schwabe, and I think about Klausy Schwabe saying, you will own nothing and be happy. And right. This sure sounds like an attempt for all of us to own nothing. And I don't know about the happy part, but nonetheless, it does feel like these are policies that would push us towards owning nothing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now
they're pushing us towards mass transit. They're pushing us towards large urban housing complexes where most people are forever renters. And I don't understand why they think that that is preferable to what has made America great historically, which is home ownership and, choice. I want to be able to buy a gas stove. I want to be able to buy a gas vehicle if that's my choice. Listen, I'm not telling anybody who wants to buy an electric vehicle that they couldn't or shouldn't. But an electric vehicle is largely economically a luxury of the well-to-do. Working class people, from an economic standpoint, can't afford an electric vehicle. And so, you're restricting their options, and it certainly does seem that it's by design.
Well, I know that you're a excellent preacher, and I know that what we've been talking about so far, some will interpret as a bunch of doom and gloom. So we have 2 minutes left, roughly, and I know that you're so anointed and skilled and gifted that you can shift gears on a whim. So could we shift just here for the last 2 minutes and give some folks some hope? Because the message you're sharing, some will be, what do I do? Cash out, I just have a bunch of cash and I need to go stockpile everything. And people can do that if they want, but there's hope for them. And I know you're able to shift gears and help us with that.
During these times of economic uncertainty, there is a great incentive in some people's minds to pull back, to try and conserve, to try and maybe not give or be as generous as they have been in the past. But a mutual friend of mine and Endtime has talked about a purpose-driven life in which there is a culture or a purpose of generosity. And when you think about the scripture, the Bible says that you will reap what you sow. And so even in challenging times, we don't want to just sow out of our abundance, but we even want to sow out of sacrifice. We want to live a life of generosity because it will come back to us when we need it most. Think about the widow, where the prophet came to her in a time of famine and drought and said, make me a little cake first, and your cruse of oil will not fail, and your barrel of meal will not fail while there's famine in the land. And that's exactly what happened. So let's do good while we can. Let's be givers. Let's try God in this one area. His word in Malachi says that we can do it. And I believe in Jehovah Jireh, the God that provides. I can have the greatest financial plan, but if I don't have God in my corner and God is my partner, I'm in big trouble. So trust in God, continue to be generous, live a generous life, and I promise it will come back in ways that you cannot anticipate.
He's not just a money guy, as you can tell. Thank you so much for joining us. God bless you, Dr. Costa. Put in the comments, Jesus is my one source, if you agree with everything he just said. We'll be right back here tomorrow at 3 p.m. Central Time. God bless.